Hey, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something. Well, it's way more than just chips and cards. It's the mental game of poker.
Mm,
That inner battle that can kind of make or break even the best hand.
absolutely. We often think of poker as this game of luck and strategy, but the real edge, the real advantage comes from understanding what is happening inside your head, up here.
And to guide us through this mental labyrinth, we've got insights from two poker pros, Jared Tendler and Barry Carter. They've seen it all at the table, and they're here to break down this mental game in a way that anyone can understand, even if you've never picked up a deck of cards.
Yeah, and you know what I find fascinating is that they don't shy away from the emotional roller coaster that poker can be, right? Like they argue that every decision, every hand, every win, every loss, it all leaves a mark, an emotional mark. They call this accumulated emotion.
So it's like emotional baggage. The more you play, the heavier it gets, so to speak.
Precisely. Imagine, right? You're playing a hand, you get hit with this bad beat. Even if you handle it perfectly on the surface, right? That frustration, that sense of injustice, it doesn't just disappear, it gets stored away. And here's the kicker. The next time you're in a similar situation, even the slightest trigger can bring all those past emotions flooding back. Exactly. Tilt. That state of mental frustration where you're not thinking clearly, you're making these impulsive decisions, your game just goes haywire. And Tendler and Carter point out this fascinating paradox. Sometimes tilt can actually be a good thing.
Wait, what? How can that be? Tilt can be good.
Well, think of it this way. Tilt acts like this giant spotlight on the weaknesses in your mental game, right? It reveals the cracks in your composure, the areas where you need to build resilience. It's like this crash course in understanding your emotional triggers.
So instead of dreading tilt, we should be like embracing it as a learning opportunity.
Exactly. It's about recognizing those early warning signs, understanding why you're tilting, and developing strategies to kind of mitigate those triggers, right? It's about turning this potentially destructive force into a tool for growth.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this whole mental game stuff is so crucial. But let's get practical for a second. How do we actually deal with all these emotions swirling around while we're sitting there trying to make good decisions?
Well, that's where Tendler and Carter's concept of injecting logic comes in, right? They emphasize that we don't have to be slaves to our emotions. We can train our minds to react differently. It's about building that mental muscle.
Mental muscle.
Yeah.
I like the sound of that. But how do we build it? Is it like meditation? Do we need like a mantra?
It's simpler than you might think, but it does take practice. They outline a 6-step process. First, you simply acknowledge the emotion, name it. Okay, I'm feeling angry right now. Second, you got to create space. Take a deep breath. Center yourself. Then inject logic. Remind yourself this is just variance, a natural part of the game.
That makes sense. So it's not about like suppressing these emotions altogether, but rather, acknowledging them and then choosing a more logical response.
Exactly. And the next step in this process, it's crucial, right? You have to figure out what you could have done differently. It's not about, dwelling on the mistake. It's about learning from it, right?
Yeah.
Then you commit to applying that lesson in the future. Finally, let go of the result and move on.
So it's like each hand, each decision becomes this like mini lesson in itself.
Precisely. And to really solidify these lessons, Tendler and Carter, they suggest keeping what they call a mental hand history. Instead of just tracking the cards, the bets, right? You write down those thoughts, those feelings that were driving your decisions.
That's interesting. So you might jot down things like, I was feeling pressured to make a move, or I let my ego get in the way of making the right fold or something.
Exactly. It's about bringing those unconscious thought patterns to the surface so you can start to understand them and ultimately change them. Think of it like, journaling for your poker game. It's a powerful tool for self-awareness.
It seems like Tendler and Carter are like big on self-awareness, not just about our emotions, but also about how we approach the game.
Yeah.
They talk about this concept of the inchworm, which really resonated with me.
Yeah, the inchworm concept, it's brilliant in its simplicity, right? Imagine your poker skills as this little inchworm. It moves forward in these fits and starts. Now, most players, they focus on those big leaps forward, right? Those moments of brilliance when everything just clicks. They're always chasing that, top of the bell curve performance.
So it's like focusing on your highlight reel instead of like the whole game.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Even when you're playing your absolute best, there's always going to be variance in poker. You're going to hit downswings, you're going to run into players who are just better than you, you're going to make mistakes.
That's where the whole inchworm analogy comes in, right?
Yeah.
If we only focus on those peak moments, our overall game, it might not be improving as much as we think.
Exactly. Imagine this, right? You're learning a new language, and you're so proud of yourself because you can read this complex novel, right? But then you try to order a coffee, and you can't even remember the word for milk. You've made progress, but your foundation is shaky.
So we're like these inchworms stretching out to grab those advanced concepts, but we're neglecting those fundamentals. We look impressive when we're all stretched out, but one wrong move, we're right back to square one. Like we haven't actually moved forward at all.
That's why Tendler and Carter, they stress the importance of moving the entire bell curve of your game forward, not just the top end, right? You do that by focusing on your worst play, identifying those leaks in your game, and patching them up.
So instead of chasing this impossible dream of always being at our best, we should be aiming for consistency, for raising the floor of our game, so to speak.
Precisely, because here's the truth. You'll learn more about your game and improve faster by analyzing your worst hands, your biggest mistakes. Those are the moments that reveal your blind spots, the areas where you really need to focus your attention.
But how do we go about analyzing those tough losses without getting, discouraged or tilting even more?
It's about approaching those situations with curiosity, not judgment. Instead of beating yourself up, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What could I have done differently? Where did my thinking go wrong?
So it's about shifting our perspective, looking at those tough losses, not as failures, but as opportunities for growth.
Exactly. Tendler and Carter would say that the most important hand you'll ever analyze is the one that you played the worst. Because within that hand, within that mistake, lies the key to unlocking a whole new level of your game.
That's a really empowering way to think about it. So how do we put all this together into a practical framework?
Yes.
And they talk about a process model, right?
Yes. The process model, it's like a roadmap for mastering the mental game. It breaks down the entire poker experience into 5 distinct stages: preparation, performance, results, evaluation, and analysis.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's break those down. Starting with preparation.
Yeah.
What does it actually mean to truly prepare for a poker session, mentally speaking?
Well, Tendler and Carter, they emphasize that preparation, it's about more than just, picking the right game or having your bankroll in order. It's about getting your mind in the zone. Think of it like warming up before a workout. You wouldn't just jump into a heavy lifting session without stretching first.
Right. You'd pull a hamstring for sure.
Exactly. It's the same with your mind. You need to get it loose, get it focused. This might involve, reviewing hand histories from previous sessions, brushing up on specific strategies, or even just taking a few minutes to, clear your head, quiet those anxieties.
So what about the performance stage? That's where the rubber meets the road, right? What happens when we're actually sitting at the table, cards in hand?
This is where all that mental preparation, it pays off. The key during the performance stage is to just stay present, be fully engaged in the moment, observing your opponents, analyzing the action, trusting your instincts.
Easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
Especially when the pressure's on, you're staring down a tough decision.
Absolutely. That's why Tendler and Carter, they warn against what they call evaluating while playing. It's that tendency to, overthink every decision, to second guess yourself, get caught up in the what if instead of trusting your gut.
It's like trying to analyze your golf swing while the club is still in motion. You're going to mess it up.
Exactly. The performance stage is about letting go of that need to overanalyze, to trust the preparation you've done, and just make the best decision you can with the information that you have at that moment.
I like it. It's about being decisive, trusting those instincts, and just, staying focused on the present moment. Okay, so we prepped our minds, played our hands. Now it's time for the results stage. What do we do with the outcome? Whether it's, a big win, a crushing loss, or somewhere in between.
Well, Tendler and Carter, they stress that the results stage, it's about more than just, tallying up your chips at the end. It's about reflecting on the quality of your decisions, not just, the outcomes. You know what I mean?
So it's not about how much money you made or lost, but how you actually played the game.
Exactly. Did you stick to your game plan? Did you manage your emotions effectively? Did you actually make progress in the areas that you've been working on, right? These are like the key questions to ask yourself during this results stage of the process.
So it's like looking like beyond the scoreboard and really assessing your performance based on those things you can control, not just the things that are out of your
Yeah.
hands, right?
Right. And that leads us to, the next stage, which is evaluation. This is where you kind of dig a little deeper, analyzing your game with a bit more precision.
So it's kind of like watching like film after a football game,
Right.
looking for those little mistakes and trying to figure out how to improve for next time.
Exactly. This might involve, reviewing specific hands, like really in detail, identifying any patterns in your decision making, noting any leaks in your game. It's about gathering as much information as you can about your performance so you can make those targeted adjustments going forward.
This is where those mental hand histories that we were talking about earlier can really come in handy, huh?
Absolutely. Having those notes about your thoughts, your feelings during those hands can be incredibly helpful when you're analyzing your performance later on, right? They give you a deeper understanding of why you made the choices that you did and how you can maybe approach those situations differently in the future.
So it's like a mental autopsy for every poker session.
Perfect analogy. And finally, we have the analysis stage. This is where you take all of the information that you've gathered, right? The results, the evaluation, those mental hand histories, and you put it to work.
It's like the homework assignment for your poker education.
Exactly. This might involve, studying with a coach, maybe discussing hands with other players, or even just taking some time to reflect on your progress, set some new goals. It's about taking those insights from the previous stages and actually using them to level up your game.
So it's not just about like playing the game. It's about like constantly learning from it, getting better, pushing yourself to new heights.
Exactly. The process model, it's not just about, the mental game of poker, right? It's really a framework for any pursuit where you're really wanting to improve. It's about breaking down your goals into these manageable steps, focusing on continuous growth, and really embracing that journey of self-improvement.
So what does this all mean? I think it means that poker is more than just a game of chance. It's a game of discipline, of self-mastery,
Yeah.
of pushing your mental boundaries to achieve your goals, right?
And it means that, you have the power. You have the power to control your own destiny at the poker table, right? You can choose to let your emotions dictate your decisions, or you can choose to master your mind and become the player that you always meant to be.
So the next time you're staring down a tough decision, remember the mental game. Remember these lessons from Tendler and Carter, and remember, you have the power to choose how you react.
One final thought I'd leave you with is this. That journey to mastering the mental game of poker, it's a lifelong pursuit. It's not always easy, but it's incredibly rewarding. So embrace the challenge, enjoy the ride, and never stop learning.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the mental game of poker. We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking. Until next time, good luck in the tables, and remember, keep your mind sharp.